Hello everyone, I am your news anchor, Yali. Welcome back to our channel. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, hurry up and hit the subscribe button. Today we will discuss the drought crisis facing Asian rivers, Florida Governor DeSantis' challenge to China, and privacy issues with TikTok. We will also look into the new trend of paying Chinese civil servants salaries with digital RMB. While exploring these political and economic issues, we will also discuss some hot topics in Chinese society, such as the cafe incident, the BMW mini ice cream incident, the marriage and childbirth policy, and the protection of Chinese girls. Before we dive into today's news, let's take a moment to appreciate a traditional Chinese architectural method. You guessed it, I'm talking about the use of bamboo as scaffolding. In the skyscrapers of Hong Kong, you will see this astonishing sight, where for hundreds of years, people have built scaffolding forests of bamboo, which I can only describe with one word: impressive. The 10 major river systems in Asia are facing a drought crisis. These rivers support the economy and energy security of multiple countries. This sounds like a serious problem, but if you were a Chinese official, you might say, President Xi instructs, green water and green mountains are gold and silver mountains. This is not a problem in China. What? You say President Xi just instructed to ensure food security, that Chinese people's bowls must be firmly held in their own hands and filled with Chinese grain, and that rice should be grown on the mountains, returning forest land to farming. Ahem, excuse me, I have to use the restroom, goodbye. Florida Governor DeSantis announced his run for the 2023 U.S. presidential election and publicly criticized the Chinese government and the Communist Party of China. DeSantis just signed a bill prohibiting Chinese people from buying agricultural land and land near military bases and core infrastructure, believing that the Communist Party of China is the greatest geopolitical threat to the United States. He stated that if elected president, he will overturn everything done by Biden on the issue of illegal immigration. It seems that this governor has a very hardline attitude towards China. This leads us to ask, can DeSantis really solve America's problems? Or is he just using China to win votes? I don't know what you think, but if DeSantis is elected president, I guess the Chinese government might start learning some Spanish in order to better understand their new adversary. Former Governor General of Canada, David Johnston, conducted an investigation, finding that the Chinese government attempted to interfere in the Canadian federal election. This reminds us that foreign government intervention in other countries' politics has become a real and growing threat. The Australian Minister of Home Affairs has pledged to uphold national security, and the U.S. House Special Committee on China Affairs has approved 10 policy suggestions related to Taiwan. The U.S. Congressional Committee on China has formally proposed policy suggestions on human rights in Xinjiang and Taiwan's security. This seems to send a very clear signal to the Chinese government. Vietnam demands China immediately withdraw its Shangyang Hong 10 inches scientific research ship, Coast Guard ships, and fishing vessels from Vietnam's waters, while China previously stated that scientific research is a normal activity within China's jurisdiction. This leads us to ask, does the Chinese government want to live in harmony with neighboring countries, or is it trying to expand its sphere of influence through territorial disputes? Let's talk about TikTok. According to the New York Times, documents they obtained from the Chinese video social media platform TikTok show that the company's employees often share personal data of American or British users through Lark's internal collaboration tool, including photos, countries of residence, IP addresses, device information, and user IDs. These groups often have thousands of employees. This sounds like a very unsafe practice, but if you were a TikTok employee, you might say, "Oh, I just want to see this cute dog's photo, I won't do anything bad." But this leads us to ask, are you running a social media platform, or are you conducting espionage activities? Let's talk about cybersecurity and cyber attacks. Microsoft warns of activity from a Chinese-backed hacker group, and the United States also condemns large-scale cyber intrusions supported by China, infiltrating critical infrastructure. This reminds us that the Chinese government seems to be a very active hacker organization on the internet. Commander Aquilino of the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command said in New York on May 23 that the U.S. President and Secretary of Defense assigned him 2 tasks. First, to prevent an invasion of Taiwan conflict from occurring. Second, if the first task fails, be prepared to fight and win. He urged Chinese leader Xi Jinping to think twice before using force against Taiwan. Let's focus on Taiwan. Taiwan's failure to participate in the World Health Assembly as an observer has sparked calls for Taiwan to join, but was rejected by the Chinese authorities. Furthermore, the Chinese government has pressured the United Nations to refuse to issue press cards to Taiwan's central news agency correspondents based in Europe. It seems that the Chinese government's stance on the Taiwan issue has not softened. The U.S. State Department expressed disappointment on May 25 at the World Health Organization's exclusion of Taiwan from the World Health Assembly as an observer for the seventh consecutive year. Spokesperson Miller said that the United States will continue to advocate for Taiwan's meaningful participation in international organizations under the United Nations system. We received a message here from Zheng Tingxuan, a correspondent for the Taiwan Central News Agency based in Europe. United Nations staff at the Palace of Nations in Geneva were unable to issue them credentials due to pressure from China. I wonder if these staff members have ever thought of becoming stand-up comedians. If so, they may want to be careful, because since comedians were fined for saying something inappropriate, China's control over stand-up comedy might be much stronger than you think. Let's talk about Chinese civil servants. Yes, you heard right, civil servants. In Changshu City, their salaries are now paid in digital RMB. Yes, digital RMB. It sounds like something of the future, but in China, the future is already here. This is the 17th province or city in China to do this. It seems that they are even more advanced than us in using blockchain to pay for coffee. A poll from Tsinghua University shows that Chinese respondents view China as the world's most influential actor, followed by the United States. Furthermore, the Chinese public hopes that China will adopt a more proactive and aggressive diplomatic stance. Nearly half of the respondents believe that Sino-US relations will improve in the future, with only 25% believing they will continue to deteriorate. These survey results are truly eye-opening. Unfortunately, it's not clear whether this survey was conducted in Tsinghua's cafeteria or library. Let's talk about the Beijing authorities' suppression of lawyers affected by the 709 crackdown. The 709 crackdown refers to the events that began on July 9, 2015. When the Chinese public security authorities arrested, summoned, criminally detained, disappeared, and interrogated hundreds of lawyers, civil rights activists, petitioners, and their relatives in up to 23 provinces. Some of these people have since gone missing. The persecution of the affected lawyers is escalating, and lawyer Wang Qianzhang's wife and child, who are currently staying at a friend's house, were taken away by Beijing authorities in the early morning of May 25. This sounds terrifying, but if you were a Beijing official, you might say, "Oh, they're just on vacation, they'll be back soon." Moving on to academia and culture, on May 22, a symposium on the first and second volumes of selected readings from Xi Jinping's works was held in Beijing. Kai Chi, a member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Secretary of the Central Secretariat, proposed that studying Xi's selections should be seen as a major political task, with themed education to promote Xi Jinping's thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics for a new era deep into people's minds and souls. In Hong Kong, 4 secondary school students were punished under the national security law for plotting anti-government bombings. In handling this case, the judge seemed to be reading a fried chicken recipe rather than a children's storybook. No joke, these poor kids were sentenced to prison and even sent to correctional institutions for reform. Kids these days, growing up so fast. The UK's Office for National Statistics announced that the net migration for 2022 set a new record, with 52,000 Hong Kongers moving to the UK under the BNO visa. These data suggest that Hong Kong people's attention to immigration issues is rising. Now, let's talk about Alibaba. The global giant recently announced they're optimizing and going on the defensive. It sounds like a pessimistic way to lay the groundwork for layoffs, but don't worry, we're used to their flashy PR strategies. Just remember, it's all about delivering talent, and you can enjoy your day. Chinese car manufacturer Great Wall Motors has reported that 2 new energy vehicles from BYD are suspected of failing to meet emission standards. This sounds like a very serious problem, but if you were a spokesperson for BYD, you might say, "Oh, this is just a small misunderstanding. We're trying to make our vehicles greener, but we need some time to perfect it." Don't think that technology can escape China's legal society. The Chinese government is planning to establish a personal credit system in the field of marriage to avoid problems of bigamy and marriage fraud. Wow, this is a reliable move to make interprovincial marriage registration more reliable. However, I would still advise everyone not to play with fire, because as everyone knows, China's credit system is as severe as a futuristic ultimate police. The Chinese government is tightening its control over culture. Many performances have been cancelled. Is this another instance of disappearing performances? But I really wonder, the Chinese government always likes to control people's entertainment and emotions. Do they think that if people aren't happy, they won't rebel? Now, let's talk about China's economic prospects. There has been a reduction in large infrastructure investments in China's Belt and Road Initiative, but a substantial increase in softer investments in fields such as biology and digital technology. Oh, China is truly between a rock and a hard place. However, I must say, development in the biological field is very important. After all, the development of the COVID-19 vaccine was no joke. We've seen a wave of Hallyu, Korean wave, sweeping China, and surprisingly, many Chinese celebrities were found to have gone to Macau to watch Blackpink's concert, and as a result, they were pushed onto the Weibo trending list and into the midst of controversy. Hey, if liking K-pop is a crime, then I guess we all have to go to jail. Disney Shanghai has increased its ticket prices, so if you're planning to go to Disney, you might need to go bankrupt. Meanwhile, we found news about potatoes. 2 couples in Zhejiang province were arrested for stealing more than 90 pounds of potatoes. Guys, this is just crazy. I never thought I'd live to see the day when even potatoes become a target of crime. Finally, let's look at recent discussions on the Chinese internet. Some comments on Weibo suggest that the Cathay Pacific incident and the BMW mini ice cream incident are essentially the same, reflecting a growing resentment among the Chinese public against unequal treatment of foreigners and a further rise and intensification of national sentiment. It appears that the Chinese people's desire for equality and justice is increasingly strong. Have you noticed the proliferation of messages on the internet about protecting Chinese girls? But we have to ask, is this out of a sense of justice, or is it another large-scale commodification of women? Some people are shouting slogans that Feng Nu should not marry barbarians. Is this questioning social bottom lines, or is it simply racial humiliation and animal expression? At a time of high unemployment in China, the government is encouraging marriage and childbirth. Some online comments say this is like rubbing salt into the wounds of the common people. Can such policies really solve social problems? We have to think about whether policymakers truly understand the real needs of the common people. Li Haoxi, involved in the military insult controversy, once performed in the United States and told the audience that there would be no stand-up comedy in China in the future, a prophetic statement. This makes us have to ask, where will China's culture and art go in the future? That's all for today's news roundup. Hope you like it. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time. Take care.